I have a few comments. I was asked to comment Joachim Palme's presentation, which I saw just an hour ago at the same time with all of you. But however, this situation is in no way different from a usual university seminar. With the exception that the students might actually not expect that the professor has read their paper in advance, while in the usual seminar audience might. And I also like to thank the organizers for organizing this conference. For the future conferences, I have one suggestion, and that is that since you have a sort of reasonably sized research department in this building, and better data than pretty much anybody else, I think that you should also have sort of institutional self-confidence sufficient to present own research also in these seminars. Okay, but I will say a few things on the papers, a few brief comments, and then I'll just say whatever I was going to say anyway, which is what I have slides on here. So a couple of small things on these presentations. One on the issue of lost generation, which is interesting and timely and catches headlines easily. Most recently by Bank of Finland researchers that show that the current young are going to lose out because of this economic crisis. This is actually a very hard empirical problem to identify lost generation, and I think that the current Finnish results are far from showing that the current young are actually going to have permanent damages from this recession. As far as the US goes, there's actually a positive earnings premium for the World War II veterans in the US. Not so for the Vietnam veterans, but even for the Vietnam veterans, the negative earnings impacts that they experience at their 30s have gone away once these people are in their 40s. So, and the usual explanation by economists is that at the Vietnam, these people lost several years of useful work experience, and it took them a while to sort of catch up with this sort of civilian work experience, so military work experience that didn't really come. Naturally, well, I mean, both of these naturally mean only benefits for the people who survived the war, but so it's not like some part of this generation was really permanently lost. That's unfortunate. On the Joachim Palme's paper, that I guess pretty much showed that the world was done already by 1990, and after that we have been in a pretty stable situation. So I would again like to sort of promote research done in this building. 2 points from the organizers. ETECO has developed a microsimulation model that can be used for simulating pensions, simulating impacts of pension policies. And I think that these microsimulation models are extremely valuable tools for studying issues like the impacts of potential pension reforms on inequality and on the size of the pensions, for example. And these can be extended very far to the future. So I think that those are very useful things. And as far as the pension policies go, my understanding is that the recent reform introducing guaranteed minimum pension, takueläke, has been very effective in terms of reducing poverty rates among the elderly, and also in reducing inequality. And if I knew that had known that this would come up, I would have actually checked this from the microsimulation results of the ETECO. Another issue related to Joachim Palme's presentation is this issue about generational contract that is in the book that I certainly haven't read, but I have the defense that it has not been published as of yet, I guess. So I think that's an interesting issue. It has sort of several aspects. One is this, that whether different socioeconomic groups, for example, how they work and how long they are in pension, and the same goes for the different generations, of course. The other issue is some policy issues, such as pre-funding the pension systems. Last time I checked, the Finnish pension system has 180 billion euros in its reserves. This is about not quite twice the government debt, but getting close to that. This is something that is not really debated that much, so with the exception of a couple of MPs from Social Democratic Party. But I think it should be, not in the way that whether we should eat up these reserves and pay higher pensions from that, but whether this system where we use pre-funding is the best possible system. It may well be. And I think, I think that one of the reasons it's not debated that much is that the Finnish pension system is so strongly run by trade unions instead of being in the democratic control and debated in the parliament. And in fact, I think that it would be useful to have a public debate on this, and the parliament would have been a good place to do that. Apparently, that must have been difficult. The pension reform, that was big. Certainly, the laws were passed by the parliament, but I think the debate would have been better. Okay. Then a few other things now on something I actually have slides on, and this. So the reason that the title is this is because I checked that the Changing Work Life was the name of the conference, so I started to keep with the program. Labor markets are changing. My second point is is that really true? I'd say that it's partially true. The world is changing in several dimensions. We certainly use much more computers than we have done in the past. Our kids do that much better than we do. I thought that I can use computers, but I'm asking my 15-year-old kids to help me out with the computer. Globalization is certainly a big thing. Walk around building here, and you see a lot of people that certainly do not speak Finnish as their first language. Also, international trade is much has increased in the last 20 years a lot, mainly due to China, and for example, in economics, we often had stories saying that trade has not so much impact on inequality, for example. All those stories have been reversed in the last 10 years, and the explanation by the researchers is that China is simply such a big thing and the trade is getting so large that it has an impact. Population aging is certainly a thing. One thing that is getting different, that the education levels are much better than they were earlier. It's also true that the skills of the people have been improving in the long term. One of the big trends is that the women have been successful, particularly in countries like Finland, if you compare from, say, 50 years ago. And the one thing that may have some impact is that unions have been getting less important in several places, and you see some of the decline in union memberships in, say, Finland also. So the labor market is changing, but I would argue that jobs are not. This is something that is not news, but still I feel that it is a reminder that would be useful. You keep up running to the people that keep claiming that now we have only temporary jobs. We need to create a social security system that can take care of people who change jobs tens of times during their lifetimes, working for several employers at the time, and at strange hours in strange places. This is in general not true. I'll show you that in a minute. It's also not true that people would change jobs much more often than they did before. It's not true that people would have been in their current jobs for shorter periods than before. It's not true that the world is getting worse in terms of, say, job satisfaction and general happiness. We have some very visible people that claim otherwise, but I think that the facts are also support this. The main source for how the world is changing in the work life is the Statistics Finland quality of work survey that has been conducted in pretty much the same way since the early 80s. I say that this should be on everybody's bookshelf. Now it's easy because it's a PDF file. It's certainly on my bookshelf, and I keep checking that numbers from that every time to time. It shows, for example, that people who claim that they have been always in roughly similar jobs, that's been 40% for the last 30 years. Same thing for women and men. Bit of random variation there, but not much, no trend for sure. It's definitely not true that temporary jobs have been getting more common. Well, okay, it is true, fine. If you compare 1984 and 2014, the share of temporary jobs has increased by 1% at this point in 30 years. But it's certainly not true that there would have been trend that would have taken place in say, late 1990s or 2000s. Why the impression that temporary jobs are getting more common is so common? I am not sure. I have a theory. My theory is that by far the most common reason for having a temp job is that you are a substitute for somebody else who is taking the leave. At the time when family policies got more generous, women started taking more leaves, and to replace these women on leave, people hired other women, and therefore young women were often in temporary jobs. My theory also says that these young, educated women make a hell of a lot more noise than old men that worked on the temporary jobs in construction sites that's 20 years earlier. And but I haven't tried proving my theory. Anyway, no trend is the only thing I claim here. I'm not claiming that my theory is right. I'm only claiming that there's certainly no trend in temp jobs. It's also not true that that people would have been or changing job very often. On average, person has been in his current job for 10 years in Finland. And this has not changed. We actually did this for a long time series a few years ago, starting from the time when the pension reform, the pension system was created using the pension data, because this is a very long data on all employment spells. Since then, there's a bit of change there. So we took a snapshot of every month, I think, from 65 until 2005. Checking how long people who were employed at that date had been in their jobs. And there's a bit of a growing trend, which is only due to the fact that population is aging, and older people have been in their current jobs for a longer time on average than younger people. So we adjusted those series to take away the impact of the age structure of the workforce, and we find pretty much completely flat profiles for 40 years. It's something that we did together with Miikka Rokkanen a few years ago. But you could find the same thing from other sources also. This is the data that we used here was the pension register data. It actually gives pretty much the same results than the labor force survey. The only limitation is that the labor force survey has not contained questions on the length that you have been in your current job for very often. But you can get, and not in a very fine grid, but you can get the numbers on people who have been in their current jobs for less than a year, and you can get numbers on people who have been in the current jobs for more than 10 years. Not in all years, but for a number of years. And that shows pretty much the same things as the pension list. Jobs are more fun than they used to be. This is again from the quality of work life survey. And if you won in a lottery, would you still work? My favorite question in the quality of work life survey. Most people say that yes, I still would work even if I had just won in the lottery. Actually, that's for the visitor lottery. So I showed these for two reasons. One is that since I happen to get a wide audience on representing several organizations, it would be good sort of if we sort of try to get the facts straight in a number of places at the same time, and sort of understand that what's happening, or rather even more what's not happening in Finnish work life. The second thing is more of a policy thing, is that when we design social insurance systems or pension systems, it's not really that we should start this redesigning that very quickly, because the people's jobs are getting very different. It may change in the future, but so far so good. It looks pretty much unchanged for the last 30 years. That's it. Thank you.